I like to move it, but only in the political sense. We are on political movements, guys, still Unit 4, still Chapter 8, but Vodcast 13. I know this unit goes on forever. However, movements are quite interesting things to know about. And we are talking about an unofficial grouping of people who are rallying for a cause. And usually a movement has that chance to it. It is boosted by chance or spontaneous events. For example, the human rights or civil rights movement was triggered by the events of the United States during the 50s and 60s. These events were marked by gross and disgusting discrimination toward black people. Think about gender discrimination movements. Once again, there were specific incidences that boosted this particular cause or this particular topic, and as we went along, more and more people actually jumped on the bandwagon to support this movement. Sometimes movements can actually turn into political parties or activist groups, formalized activist groups, formalized parties. A lovely example is in Germany. We had the Greens, which was a movement or a group of people who were concerned about the planet, are still concerned about the planet. But as the movement started to pick up some speed and more people got involved and more people thought it was important to save the planet, the Greens actually said, hey, why don't we formalize this whole thing and why don't we run in the next elections? And up to this day, they still have a significant showing in the German Bundestag, and they are now part of the political bouquet. When we are talking about movements, we need to understand they don't have the kind of finances available that your party political official organizations have. There are, however, still methods that movements use, and there are certain phases that they usually go through in their legitimization, in their growth. And these are showcased on this slide. We have petition, promulgation, solidification, polarization, nonviolent resistance, escalation, and revolution. Please keep in mind, not every movement has to go through these phases. Not every movement will make a situation escalate. Not every movement uses nonviolent resistance. Not every movement culminates in revolution. So please just keep that in mind as we're going through them. A method, and probably the starting point of your movement, is petitioning. You know what a petition is. You're going around, you are collecting signatures for your topic or for your cause. I believe it's about 5,000 signatures that you need in South Africa in order to be heard by Parliament, in order to get an appointment to plead your case. Promulgation is when your movement picks up some speed. Promulgation is actually just the religious word for propaganda. Just like propaganda is mass persuasion in politics, promulgation is mass persuasion in religion. I don't know why they're using the word promulgation here, but you know what it means. You are spreading the belief in your movement, in your topic, in your cause. That's promulgation. Solidification has to do with you having a solid member base. So the members of your movement or the people who follow your movement are educated about what you're doing. They are motivated to actually do something about the topic or about the cause, and they are formalizing the actions of the movement in terms of meetings, in terms of protests, and so on and so forth. Very often, because the movement doesn't have as much cash lying around, they are trying to polarize. What that means is you are trying to stir the pot. You're trying to be controversial in what you are bringing about. If you're looking at the Green Movement as one example, some of the followers of this movement have tied themselves to railway tracks in order to stop nuclear waste being transported, or other followers have sat in a rubber duck and have tried to stop huge oil tankers. And of course, if you see such pictures, what you're achieving is a polarization. Polarization is good because it starts conversations. When people are outraged about something, they actually discuss it, they debate, they bring the topic into the public sphere. Nonviolent resistance, we've heard everything about it It is the kind of protest that doesn't use violence and that doesn't have to escalate, but you are exerting psychological pressure on the decision makers, and you want to bring about change, and you want to make what's morally wrong into a right. Escalation could happen, doesn't have to happen. We just had some escalation in the United States, and not just in the United States, also in the UK, to do with the Black Lives Matter movement. And yes, I mean, this could happen, especially if the voices aren't heard, if the decision makers are not reacting quick enough to the movement's ideas, especially if the movement is sizable enough to exert that kind of pressure. Worst case or best case scenario, depending on how you look at it, there is going to be a revolution. Yes, movements usually were the stirrers who started revolutions. Think of Russia, for example. Think of the French Revolution as well. This was a movement of farmers, of ordinary people who basically had enough of the decision makers, of the government. So to overthrow the current government is the aim of a revolution. But as I said, it doesn't always have to culminate in escalation and revolution, but it's good to have movements in our midst. It's good to have a vibrant public opinion where people fight for what they believe in, where people get active, where people go out. Because as I said to you so many times before, we're becoming more and more apathetic. It's good to see that people still stand up for what they believe.